First Liberty Institute is the largest legal organization in the country that focuses exclusively on religious liberty in the United States. And for 13 years, we are proud to say that we have partnered with the American Legion and represented the American Legion when the attacks have begun on our veterans' memorials across the country. When the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial was actually declared by a court that it had to be torn down, we went to the Supreme Court and we got that reversed, and that memorial, that World War I memorial, stands today. When the Mount Soledad Veterans Memorial outside of San Diego came under attack, we entered that case and we made sure that that memorial still stands again today, and you can go see that memorial. It's one of the most beautiful memorials in our country. When the Pledge of Allegiance or our national motto have come under attack, we have joined the American Legion and gone into court, and we have won those cases every single time. And now, the Bladensburg Veterans Memorial, I think we have a picture, is under attack. In fact, on Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, we had to argue at the Federal Court of Appeals to keep this memorial from being torn down. One of the judges asked the following question during the oral argument: if we just cut the arms off this cross, won't that take care of any offense? So we're not sure what kind of decision we're going to get from this court, but I want to assure you that we are not going to stop until this is a victory and this memorial is left standing. Now, I'm here today to give the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award to somebody who has really shown sacrifice and courage and real advancement for our veterans and for religious liberty. The prize that goes with this award is fairly incredible. It's a Henry Repeating Arms Special Edition rifle that only a few people have: Philip Onderdonk and Dan Wheeler, and one more person is about to get that award. I want to show you a video that explains the award and shows the prize up close so you can see what they're about to receive.
Since our nation's founding, America's veterans have built monuments and memorials to honor our service members. Today, there's a coordinated effort underway to tear these memorials down. Together, First Liberty and the American Legion are leading the fight to keep them standing. When the Mount Soledad Veterans Memorial came under fire, we were there to protect it. When the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial was attacked, we were there to fight for it. When the 90-year-old Bladensburg World War I Veterans Memorial was threatened, we were there to defend it. When our national motto, "In God We Trust," and the Pledge of Allegiance went to court, we were there to make sure future generations would be able to continue these time-honored traditions. Freedom, and especially religious freedom, has a great champion in the American Legion. Every year, First Liberty honors a hero of religious liberty with the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award. Some give trophies. First Liberty gives a rifle. Ever since the Civil War, veterans demonstrating the highest dedication to duty have been presented with a silver-plated Henry Repeating rifle. Known as the rifle that won the West, this Military Service Tribute Edition rifle is encased in fine walnut with adjustable sights and a 20-inch octagonal barrel. The highly polished receiver cover features intricate scrollwork engravings. On the right, a majestic bald eagle is etched into 24-karat gold next to a military shield recognizing exceptional service. On the left, the Statue of Liberty is carved into the side next to the famed Liberty Bell, which rang out for a nation that will remain forever free. The side features a majestic banner proudly saluting our military heroes along with a patriotic shield. And on the stock, an emblem of the Onderdonk Award is etched into the side, forever memorializing this year's champion of our religious freedom. There's nothing more American than a Henry, and there's no greater champion of religious freedom than this year's recipient of the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award. First Liberty salutes your dedication to duty in the service of freedom.
The recipient of our award this year, before he was ever elected to office, was known as one of the leading attorneys in the country and donated hundreds of thousands of dollars of his time for the veterans and religious liberty. When the Mojave Desert Cross was under attack, he went all the way to the United States Supreme Court to get that victory. In fact, his brief was cited 12 times by the justices of the Supreme Court in upholding that memorial. When the Houston National Cemetery decided that the burial ritual that had been used by the veterans for 100 years could not be said anymore because it mentioned God, this man entered the fray, and we won a great victory, making sure and in fact preserving the rights of 22 million veterans who have the right to be buried in our national cemeteries. So I am proud to announce that this year's winner of the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award is now Senator Ted Cruz.
God bless the American Legion. What an incredible, incredible privilege to be with each of you. What a privilege to be with heroes and patriots. It is humbling and it is powerful that when we live in an era when someone who can throw a ball or sing a song is called a hero, to be reminded that the real 1% are the men and women gathered here. The real 1% are those who answered the call and rose up to defend our nation and fought and bled, and far too many who died to protect our freedom. I am honored to be with you. I thank you. I salute you. And in particular, I want to today thank you for your commitment to defending our first liberty, to defending religious liberty. When our nation was founded, we fought a bloody revolution, a war with guns and bayonets, where a handful of scrappy revolutionaries defeated what was then the mightiest armada on the face of the earth. But it wasn't just a revolution of arms we fought. It was a revolution of ideas. Because the ideas behind the American founding transformed the world. We began with two fundamental propositions. Number one, that our rights, they don't come from a king, they don't come from a queen, they don't come from a president. Rather, they come from God Almighty. As the Declaration so powerfully put it, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed not by a king, not by a queen, not by a president. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When each of you took up arms to defend our nation, those are the rights, those are the freedom you were defending. And the second revolution of ideas is from time immemorial, we had been told that power emanates from the top. It emanates from the monarch. The American Revolution upended that. We said power, sovereignty comes from down, up. It comes from we the people. And our founders created what Thomas Jefferson called a constitution to bind the mischief of government. Well, in modern days, there's a lot of mischief of government. That right, that first liberty, religious liberty, the right for every one of us to seek out the Lord God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls, to live according to our faith without government getting in the way. That is foundational to everything else. And I want to commend the American Legion, because it would have been easy for you to sit back and say, you know what, I stood and fight, I gave my service, my time is done. But the American Legion, the patriots in this room and across the country, you cannot leave a man on the battlefield, and you cannot stop fighting for the country you love. When you look at faith and religious liberty, one of the great blessings I've had is meeting across the state of Texas and across the country so many chaplains who serve. Can everyone here who has been in active duty or is a retired chaplain in the military, I would ask you if you would please stand that we can thank you and recognize you. The service of so many chaplains for centuries has made such a profound difference to our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. And yet we saw just a few years ago an Air Force chaplain in the state of Alaska reprimanded because he wrote a blog post saying there are no atheists in foxholes. His political superiors reprimanded him for doing that. I guess they thought he was being insensitive to atheists. I kind of thought that was a chaplain's job, to welcome and embrace them with God's forgiving love. But it's interesting if you look at that phrase, there are no atheists in foxholes. It can be traced back to a 1954 speech that President Dwight D. Eisenhower gave to the American Legion. Now, I'd note, President Eisenhower had some passing familiarity with the military. And President Eisenhower, in that speech, he told the tale of what's come to be known as the four immortal chaplains. The USS Dorchester, coming off the tip of Greenland, was hit by a German U-boat, and the boat began to sink. There were four chaplains aboard the Dorchester, two who were Protestant, one who was Catholic, one who was Jewish. And as the boat began to go down, they looked around and realized there were not enough life jackets for the people on board. So each of those chaplains took the life jacket he had around his neck and he put it around the neck of another man. And when those chaplains did so, they didn't ask that man in front of them, are you a Catholic? Are you a Protestant? Are you a Jew? He simply gave his life that the other man might live. And those four chaplains, arm in arm, began singing and praying and went down with the ship, giving their lives so their brothers might live. That truly is the definition of love. And the idea that we have had litigating organizations and political appointees that would want to make it a punishable offense to acknowledge God truly staggers the mind. Another example that we saw in my home state of Texas, in Houston, the VA directed the American Legion and other private organizations, other private clergy, that if you were presiding over a military funeral, you could not invoke the name of God. You could not say Jesus, you could not say God. This is the VA saying God's name is not allowed at a military funeral. And a Houston pastor who refused to be silenced brought a lawsuit. The American Legion brought me in to represent you, and I was honored to represent the American Legion and that pastor fighting for religious liberty, and we won. Defending that fundamental liberty. Yet another example, in recent years we saw the prior administration litigating against the Little Sisters of the Poor. Now, what are the Little Sisters of the Poor? A Catholic charity of nuns who've taken vows of poverty. They devote their lives to caring for the poor and the elderly. The Obama administration litigated against them, arguing that the nuns must be fined millions of dollars unless they agreed to pay for abortion-inducing drugs and others. Now, let me give y'all a very, very simple rule of thumb. If you're litigating against nuns, you've probably done something wrong. By the way, there's a corollary to that. If you're litigating against the American Legion, you've definitely done something wrong. That case, the Little Sisters of the Poor, went all the way to the Supreme Court. I'm pleased to tell you the new administration with President Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions have come in with a renewed commitment to religious liberty, and they are no longer persecuting the Little Sisters of the Poor. Yet another example, one that my friend Kelly talked about, the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial. This is a lone white Latin cross in the middle of the Mojave Desert, erected to honor the men and women who gave their lives in World War I. Has stood there for over 80 years, until one day the ACLU came along. And they were offended. Let me just say for a minute, everyone who gets offended at everything they see, can't everyone just chill out? Look, I see nuts doing offensive things all day long. You don't have to whine about it. And you don't have to run to a federal court and say, oh, guard my eyes. The ACLU filed a lawsuit seeking to tear down that monument. In the federal district court, they won. The federal court of appeals, they won. The federal court ordered that 80-year-old Veterans Memorial to be covered with a burlap sack with a chain and a padlock at the bottom. Because the federal court concluded you could not gaze upon the image of a cross on public lands. Well, I'll agree with the court on one thing. There is power in the image of a cross. Well, the American Legion, as has been your pattern and practice, did not shy away from the fight. You stood forward to fight to preserve that Veterans Memorial, and I was incredibly privileged to be your lawyer pro bono for free defending that memorial. We went before the U.S. Supreme Court, Kelly Shackelford and I, on behalf of the American Legion, on behalf of millions of veterans across this nation defending religious liberty, and we won 5-4. But it was 5-4. Those stakes should give you pause. We were one justice away from the Supreme Court ordering, tear down that Veterans Memorial. And mark my words, when they tear down the cross on a Veterans Memorial in the middle of deserts, we are but moments away from the next order to tear down the tombstone with the cross or Star of David lined one after the other, after the other, after the other. That's not America. That's not who we are. Those are not the fundamental freedoms and values. Everyone, regardless of your faith, regardless of if you have no faith, America protects your right to live according to your faith and conscience. It is not government that should be an enemy of religious faith. So I want to say to the men and women gathered here, thank you. Thank you for standing and answering the call. We face a dangerous time in our nation's history. We face enemies abroad that are getting more and more dangerous, that are on the verge of acquiring nuclear weapons or have nuclear weapons. We face radical Islamic terrorists that seek murder and mayhem. And we face a military whose readiness has been degraded for far too many years. And I pledge to you, I am committed to working hand in hand with the President and the administration and Congress to rebuild the military. To ensure that our servicemen and women have every resource, every training, every tool to keep this nation safe, to defeat our enemies, and to preserve our nation. For those who have served for the veterans, I remain committed to ensuring that we honor our commitment to you, our solemn commitment to every veteran, and that includes when it comes to health care. I believe every veteran should have the right to choose your doctor, whoever that doctor may be. We should strengthen and improve the VA, but at the same time give veterans the ability that if you choose you want to go to the cardiologist down the street, you ought to have the right to make the choice for your health care. And then I give you my solemn pledge that the fight to defend religious liberty, the fight to defend the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. By the way, I had 4 people say to make sure there wasn't a chamber in the round on that rifle. There wasn't. And all of our fundamental rights, I give you my solemn pledge that just as each of you have risen to the occasion over and over again to defend our lives, our rights, our freedoms, that I will continue to be honored to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in that same fight for that same freedom that makes this nation, the United States, the greatest nation in the history of the world. Thank you, and God bless you.